Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
And I thought, man, I'm getting pulled in a lot of directions here. And at the same time, I still want to be a father and a husband. And every once in a while, have a friend, to sit down and have a drink with, relax,
Right.
actually. So I said, I don't know if I can just keep doing this.
Welcome to the fourth season of the Woodworking Network podcast and a new episode. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by Wood Pro Expo, Florida. Today our guest is Matt Mimnagh, a new North Carolina woodworker with an interesting story to tell about how he changed his business for the better by making it smaller. But before I get to that, I want to talk about finding balance between work and life. Do you work to live or live to work? It's an important question that has long-term implications for your health, wealth, and well-being. As a media company focused on business, we talk a lot about things like production and efficiency and profitability and growth. We talk less about the human element of all of those things, but it's a subject we all ignore at our own peril, and likely at the peril of our business as well. Just about every company I visit and every business leader I talk to shares concerns about not being able to find enough good employees. I often ask in response what they have been doing to attract those employees. Most reply with a list of traditional incentives like higher wages and benefits. Few talk about making their businesses a place in which people want to work. I've been described occasionally as a workaholic. From my first real job at a local newspaper when I was still a teenager, I was always willing, often enthusiastic, to put in long hours to get the job done. Much of my personal identity has been defined by my work. But over the years, some things have moved in to compete for time and mental bandwidth. Marriage and kids were and remain big factors in my work-life balance equation. I've had the luxury for many years of being able to work from home, so even when I'm putting in long hours at work, I'm still accessible by the family. That was especially valuable when my kids were young. But even now, it plays a role in my marriage and my relationship with my adult children, even with them in their own homes many miles away. But most people in a production environment can't work from home. They have to interact with coworkers directly to produce products together. How that work is constructed, managed, and compensated all play a part in making the time at work rewarding and worth the cost of time away from other parts of life. Frustrations at work will quickly erode rewards and tip the scales away from work-life balance. Some things just aren't worth any form of compensation. Shigeo Shingo was one of the founding fathers of what today we call lean manufacturing, and I was privileged to have spent a day with him back in 1984. One of his more profound statements was, "There are 4 purposes for improvement: easier, better, faster, cheaper." These 4 goals appear in order of priority. Making things easier first improves the work-life balance of employees. As employers, we are often blind to the life side of our workers' work-life balance scales. We need to recognize and pay more attention to the fact that work is not necessarily the highest priority of our employees. And as managers, employers, and owners, we need to pay attention to our own work-life balance as it affects our outlook, our focus, and relationships with everyone around us. I can't tell anyone what constitutes perfect work-life balance, but I urge everyone to consider it seriously in their own lives, no matter what their role in work is. I want to get to our interview with Matt Mimnagh, but first, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. It's really easy for woodworkers to stay stuck inside, focused on their shops and production. But over the last couple of years, the pandemic has forced them to be even more isolated than usual. Now it's time to get out of the shop and resume life in the outside world, especially when it's a chance to network with your woodworking business peers. That opportunity is coming April 12th through 14th in West Palm Beach, Florida, as the WoodPro Expo joins with the Closets Conference and Expo to offer an unparalleled opportunity to boost your business with intelligence on techniques, tools, and technology. Let's get face to face again. Learn more at woodproexpoflorida.com. See you there. Now let's get to our interview with Matt Mimnagh. We talk a lot on this podcast about growing and expanding your business, but today we're going to touch on another important issue of work-life balance with a fascinating story from Matt Mimnagh, a woodworker from North Carolina who took a different approach to his business. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, Matt.
I will appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I my first contact with you was a fascinating Facebook post that you made in a professional cabinet making and installation group. But before we get to that, let's get a little background on how did you get started in woodworking?
Sure. So I actually started my business as a handyman out of desperation. Basically, I was broke. And I had some basic carpentry skills and some basic home improvement things that I've done around my own house and working here and there with some friends that own businesses. And then when I moved up to North Carolina from Florida, kind of starting over, ran out of money and needed to do something. So I just started asking people around the neighborhood and local community groups if anybody needed anything fixed around their house. And that was really my introduction to the trades in a professional capacity. So I ran my handyman business for a couple of years before somebody asked me to do some built-in cabinets in their living room. And I told them the same thing I told everybody when they asked me if I could do something. It was, yeah, sure. I'll figure it out. And I had never built a cabinet in my life, but I knew a cabinet was a box and I knew I could build a box. And then put pretty stuff on it to make it look nice. So that's what I did. And it was terrible. And I was surprised when a couple of years later, she called me back to put cabinets in her new house. And I was almost afraid to do it because I didn't want her to see how much better I was, because that would have exposed me as the fraud I was years ago. But I did, and I've kind of, from that point, I just decided to really niche down into cabinetry, and that became most of what I did. So did a lot of built-in cabinets, a few kitchens, and then a lot of trim and millwork.
So then how big did the business get over time? You had some employees, right?
Yeah, there were 4 of us when we were sort of in full tilt, and we were, running full time, just like everybody, just pounding out as much as possible. But we were doing a lot of good work with just the 4 of us, and we had some outsourcing involved too. So that helped us do a little bit more volume than we would have been able to in our small space, because we actually had a pretty small shop.
Yeah. What kind of equipment and shop were you operating in? Was all conventional equipment, or did you have any CNC or anything like that?
Everything we had was conventional. And for the first couple of years, I built cabinets in my driveway using a track saw and a miter saw.
Yep.
And then we moved into a big shop and still couldn't quite have the room for the big CNC and bander and all that sort of thing. But that was one of the things I outsourced within, a year or so of being in that space. I actually found a local a commercial cabinet maker. And he said, hey, I got this machine and it's kind of sitting here some days and I just want to put it to use. Can I cut parts for you? And I said, yeah, man, let's do it. So then we started outsourcing our sheet goods and our banding to him. And then, and we also outsourced our drawer boxes and doors. So everything in our shop was your conventional stuff, your table saw, miter saw, And then
Hmm.
your smaller hand tools, joinery tools and stuff. But we also did our own finishing. So we did have a spray booth set up in house.
And you were doing your own installations and all that too, or?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, we did everything turnkey, start to
Hmm.
finish, all in house, except for the
Now, how
doors.
many hours a week were you working in the business at that point? What was that entailing?
So I'd say I was probably doing 60 hours a week, and that was
Hmm.
me. Mostly at that point, I really stopped building things personally, and I was just,
Managing the
doing
business.
the right CAD drawings and sales and meetings and that sort of thing. And I had a good set of a good group of guys that were mostly taking care of things, and I would pop in for some quality control and I always hired really green guys, like people that didn't know anything about cabinet making. So I did a lot of training too. So I still had my hands involved heavily because they needed so much help in the beginning, especially. But towards the end, I was pretty proud of the guys. They were pretty self-sufficient and could do most things without me. I just had to, be there fairly often for quality control stuff.
And just to get an idea of how much productivity you were creating out of that operation. I mean, how many kitchens or how many projects were you doing over the course, say, a month?
So, I guess I'd translate it into smaller, like built-in projects, because that was primarily what we
Right.
did.
Mm-hmm.
But we were doing probably 3 to 4 a month.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what made you decide clearly we're talking a little bit in the past tense here. What made you decide you wanted to downsize this?
Well, a few things started happening all at once. My wife was starting her business, had started her business, and it was doing really well. So I found myself in this weird place where I didn't have to kill myself working every minute possible, which is incredible. I hadn't experienced that in a long time. So all of a sudden I could sort of take my foot off the gas. So that happened. We homeschool our kids too. So our kids are getting older and more. Schooling is becoming a more demanding thing. So, because we do it all at home. So that was requiring a lot of my wife, which was pulling her away from her business. We're also building our own house. I'm a GC and I'm self-building our own personal home. So that was requiring a lot of me. And everything kind of just came together. And I thought, man, I'm getting pulled in a lot of directions here. And at the same time, I still want to be a father and a husband. And every once in a while, have a friend, to sit down and have a drink with, relax,
Right.
actually. So I said, I don't know if I can just keep doing this. And now that I'm not the sole breadwinner in the family, this might be a good time to take a risk, because it's not all depending on me right now. Maybe I can start exploring some other ways to do this. And that kind of got the ball rolling.
So, and just so that folks understand, this isn't a real small family either. How many kids do you have?
Yeah, we have 4.
Yeah, so that's a
Yep.
handful.
Yeah,
I had 3. I always tell people that as soon as you have the third one, you realize you only have 2 hands.
Oh yeah, yeah. And after 3, though, really, like after that, you're at terminal velocity. Like it's not going to get any worse. So we really like our kids and we like having a big family, and we're probably not even done yet. We might add a couple more. So.
Oh, that's definitely a challenge. Now, your wife's business, without getting into details, she works out of the house or.
Yep. Yeah, she works from home. It's an online sort of social media / e-commerce.
Right. So that helps out a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure.
So once you made this decision to try and do something different, how did you go about scaling back the other business?
Well, the hardest part for me, honestly, was figuring out a way to let my guys down. Like I said, I had a really good group of guys and I didn't want to put anybody in a bad spot. So that was the thing I had to think about the longest. But then once, I really made up my mind and I said, okay, I got to draw a line in the sand. And, when I get to this date, it just has to happen. So I tried to put as many things in place before that as I could. And so, running numbers and looking into everything. And if I scale back and I'm only doing X amount of dollars in sales, how does that translate to my income? And is that enough? And is my wife on board? And, all this sort of stuff had to happen in the background before I said a word to anybody. But really, I just decided I can do a lot of this using subcontractors and outsourcing with some of the contacts I already have, and sort of set up shop in my garage at home and make it work from there. And so once I ran the numbers and kind of had the logistics figured out, I said, okay, I think this is going to work. And like I said, having some extra income in the house made it possible for me to take that risk. I would have been a lot more apprehensive, a year ago.
Right. No, I understand that.
I got everything lined up and everybody was on board, lined up some good installers, a couple new finishers, and felt pretty good about making the jump at that point. Yeah.
So then what happened to your guys that you had in the shop? Did any of them come on part-time with you, or did they go off on their own way, or what happened there?
Yeah, pretty much everybody went their own way. First I set up contacts for them with anyone I knew in the industry. We had another shop right next door. I talked to them. I talked to the guy that with the CNC that cuts my parts, and asked him if he needed any help. And I connected them with some of these guys. And so I was trying to make sure everybody had somewhere to go. And I gave the guys a lot of notice. I gave them like 6 weeks notice too, which was a little bit of roll the dice, because they could just jump ship. And I'm in the middle of our last big kitchen install of the year.
Right.
And I was like, hey guys, this is how I would want someone to treat me. I would hate to have this sprung on me. So I'm going to give you plenty of notice. Please don't abandon me. Will you please just stick around and help me finish this project? And I just knew that, I guess treating people the way you want to be treated was the safe bet. And even if I had to finish out all the work by myself, at least I could sleep at night. But I had two of the guys basically stuck around to the end, two of the more important guys. So we were able to finish everything up. Basically, I think I might've gone back to the job site a few times by myself, but basically everybody stuck around and helped me finish. And then they went on their way. One guy's still a cabinet maker. He went on with the shop that was next door to us. And the other guy, he linked up with a traveling blacksmith group that does like medieval fairs and stuff.
Right.
So that's what he's doing, which is awesome. Good for him. He loves it, and I'm happy for him.
So with all of your concerns in advance, did you end up taking a financial hit, or did it turn out different?
I mean, I took a little bit of a financial hit, which I expected, but not much. Really, I was surprised when I looked at the numbers and looked at the way I build my quotes for my customers and looked at, okay, doing this piece outsourced versus in-house, how's that going to compare? What does that look like for my profits and my margin? And it actually wasn't too much different. When you get rid of all the expenses of owning a shop and running a shop, there's quite a lot of meat left on the bone. So being able to take that and feed it to the outsourcers was a big deal. And so I took a little bit of a hit, but I'm actually bringing home close to about what I was before.
Wow. And how many hours are you working now?
I'm working about 15 a week.
So 15 hours, but bringing in roughly the same amount of money as you were doing at 60 hours. So that sounds like a raise to me.
Yeah, it was. It absolutely was. And wow. I could scale up and I could still put in 60 hours using this model and kill it. But that's not why I did it. I didn't do it to make more money. I did it to have more time.
So what was your family's reaction? Let's take it in steps. What was the initial reaction when you said you think you want to do this? And then now that you've been doing it, what's the reaction?
So my wife has had to put up with my crazy ideas for about 11 years now. So anytime I come to her with an idea, she's used to it, and she's always really on board and supportive. Somehow I got a woman that thinks the world of me and thinks I'm like invincible and can do anything I put my mind to, which is great sometimes. Other times I just make a bunch of dumb choices. But she often, says, "Hey, I trust you. I know you're not going to lead us wrong. You're going to do your due diligence and do the research and figure it out, make a plan. And if you think it's good, I'm on board." So she's that way. And so this time was no different. And then, of course, my kids were excited because anytime you say, "Hey, Dad's going to be home a lot more now. What do you think about that?" Well, what do you think they're going to say? Unless you're an absolute tyrant of a father, then they're going to be excited. And so they were. And like I said, we homeschool. So I've been helping out with some school and taking on some lessons and stuff here and there, which, they're just excited to have any kind of change up in their normal day. It's just exciting to them. So they're excited. It's going really well. It's been a few months now. And so far, so good. Everybody's really thrilled about it.
Well, that's great. And how about your wife's outside work? Is that growing or about the same, or is your choice to downsize your operation, is that done anything to what she was doing?
Yeah, actually quite a bit. Because one of the things I'm also doing, which kind of played into this decision, was helping her with her business. So like I said, she's on social media and stuff, and I have a background in like photography and video. So I've been helping her with some of the video content for her business. And her business is growing. I won't say it's all because of me all of a sudden coming on board, but she's killing it. Her and her team are fantastic, and they're rock stars. But more than that, it's just been me giving her some room to breathe where she can focus on her writing and different things that she's doing. That's been a big help.
Well, that's great. Now, what's your advice for shop owners who are struggling with the work-life imbalance issues? I mean, every time I ask like a group and some talk, how many hours a week are you working? It's all way over 40 for most folks. And, right. I keep telling them that's not right. You need to work it to a different way. Yeah. So what do you tell shop owners who are asking those kinds of questions?
So it's really a question you have to look inward, and it requires a lot of soul searching, I guess I'd say, about what really matters to you. But I'll just give you an idea of kind of what was going on in my mind and how, it made it easy for me to make the decision. And I would kind of counsel somebody in the same way. But as I was, giving it a lot of thought about work-life balance and what that means, to me, it was more a question of what's gonna make me fulfilled, and for me, it's like finding purpose or meaning in your life, right? And most guys aren't going to get 100% fulfillment from work. You get a lot of fulfillment from work. I mean, I love the work I do, and I could probably go do something else entirely, but I'm still here doing it, sort of as a side hustle now because I love it. So the work itself is important, but that's not where we find full fulfillment. Otherwise, all the people that are working 80 hours a week would be thrilled. So it's like, where do you find meaning? And, God created us for a purpose, and the Bible talks about this, basically in a nutshell, we are to love God and love others. And for me, that the others that are central in my life are my family. So how can I love them? How can I serve them? Figuring that out is going to give me the purpose I'm looking for to go along with the work, so it can't be all one or the other. So really finding the amount of work you can do that allows you to serve the people in your life. So serve your family, to love your family, right? So, and to meet their needs. That doesn't mean just physical needs, because I think what a lot of guys do is they kill themselves and they go, I'm doing this for my family, right? I want to give them a better life. I didn't have this or that when I grew up. I don't want them to struggle like I did, or so on and so forth. And so we put physical needs sort of on a pedestal at the expense sometimes of emotional needs and spiritual needs and things like that. So if the goal in finding purpose is to love others and serve your family, you have to make sure you're serving all of their needs, not just the physical needs. And it's hard to say what that is for each person. My kids are young. They need me now. These are very important years for them. And so I decided, in order to meet their needs best, they need more of my time than they need my money. So that means we can go without some things. And I think this is where people get really upset because you say, well, do you really need that nice new truck? Do you really need the house that, that dream house? Could you be there for your family more if you drove an $8,000 used, F-150 instead of the nice, King Ranch and all this,
right?
Or whatever it is, So, and we've kind of had that perspective throughout our whole marriage. We've gone without things for our whole marriage because being with the family was more important. So again, some soul searching is required to really establish, what do I really care about? And does my life reflect that? Because if you're working 80 hours a week because you have a $700, $900 truck payment, then maybe you're not living what you say. So that's kind of my advice is, to find purpose. Again, I define purpose as loving God, loving others. And if I'm going to love my family, I need to know what they need. How can I meet their needs? And then I'm going to design my life around that. And again, for me, it just means more time than money at this point. And that'll change. When I was talking to the guys in the cabinet makers group, I said, maybe when they're older, I'll scale back up and start crushing it again and really go for it. But now's not the time for that. And that's actually a good point about balance too. When you think about work-life balance, I think maybe we have this idea of, well, balance means I'll work half my time and I'll play half my time, and then things will be balanced. But I don't think that's true. I think you have to look at the bigger picture, because we've certainly had seasons of more play than work and vice versa. So, but overall, we try to balance it out. So if we have a big thing coming up, my wife's working on a book right now, and it's like, okay, she has to be like 100% in for the next few months. So the balance day to day is off, right? But then a few months after that, she can scale way back on her workload, and she has a lot more time available. So it's not day to day, it's overall, are things balanced, and recognizing that and being able to prepare for that and prepare the family for that. Like, hey, mom's going to be busy for a few months, things aren't going to quite be the same, but after that, things are going to be, you're going to have more time. So there's balance can mean a lot of different things.
Do you have any regrets about scaling back the business?
None, not so far. Sometimes and again, don't get me wrong, I love running my business. I loved working with my guys. But just this past Friday, I was home doing something, and I looked at my wife and I said, you know what I'm not doing right now? I'm not worrying about what my installer's doing in the field or what's happening at the shop, or I'm not thinking about the materials that didn't come and how to move the next project up so we have something to do on Monday. I said, that's the greatest feeling in the world. And maybe some guys can run huge operations and never stress out. I never figured out quite how to do it. But having that presence of mind, freedom in my brain to think and be present with my kids, no regrets, none so far.
Well, that's great. I definitely want to follow up with you at a future date to see how things are going. And how old are your kids now? I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, they're 2, 4, 7. 7 and 9.
Oh, okay. Those are exciting years. Lots of things happening.
Yeah.
So at any rate, well, I wish you a whole lot of luck. And, I wanted to have you on the podcast because I think the things that you say are things that a lot of our audience needs to think about. They may still want to stay in the shop and build up the business and all, but think about efficiency in a different way of you're doing 15 hours and making what you did when you were going 60 hours. There's something to be said there. So I think there's a great value in this kind of a discussion, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to do it.
That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, Wood Pro Expo Florida and the Woodworking Network. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.